Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Yamina Pressler, a soil scientist, an artist, and educator at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And while I am so bummed that I am not able to be with you today, I am very excited to tell you about my creative practice and how I have been integrating science and art together to think about how we can celebrate soil habitats and biodiversity. So I'm going to explore my creative process today and tell you a little bit about some of the insights that I've gained from doing this kind of work. So when most people think about soil, and certainly before I started studying soil, this is the picture that came to my mind when I heard the word soil. And in fact, when you do a quick Google search, you are confronted with images that look very similar to this. And while it is true that soils are a medium for plant growth, they are so much more than that. And in the years that I have been studying soil, I have learned to come to appreciate soils as looking something more like this. Soils are dynamic, complex systems, and they exist in a wide array of colors and shapes and forms. And soil scientists will study that diversity in order to understand how soils form and function. And so as a soil scientist, I have developed the eyes to be able to see soils in a new way. And this has informed not just my research and scholarship, but also my science communication, education, and my art. Now, soils are special because they exist at this environmental interface between the atmosphere, the biosphere, the hydrosphere, and the geosphere. And they really integrate across all of these components of the Earth system that create a really unique habitat. And soils, not only do they integrate across this environmental interface, but they also exist in a variety of different forms. And the reason that there are so many different kinds of soils out there in the world is because of the soil forming factors. So this is a diagram, some artwork by Louis Fausac that shows the 5 different soil forming factors that soil scientists think about when we consider why there are so many different kinds of soils and the controls on that diversity. And so you can see that a given soil is a function of things like climate, organisms, the topography, the kind of original parent material, and the amount of time that that soil has been developing. And so because of the variation in different kinds of climates across the world and different kinds of organisms, whether that be plants at the surface of the soil or microorganisms living within the soil, there are a huge diversity of different organisms and climates, and then topographies and original rock. All of those things lead to a huge variation in different soil types. And these soil forming factors create variation in the physical, chemical, and biological properties of the soil because they act on the soil forming processes. So here, these are 4 general processes that soil scientists use to describe how a soil forms. And so the reason that climate or parent material or time is a soil forming factor is because it acts on one or more of these 4 processes. The soil forming processes are additions, things that are coming into the soil, that might be water or organic matter, as well as losses, things that are leaving a given soil. Again, it could be water. It could be erosion is another example. And then there are translocations and transformations. Translocations are movement within the soil, both down, deeper in depth, and also across. And transformations are chemical reactions that occur within the soil that transform components from one to another. And so the soil forming factors act on these soil forming processes to give rise to a huge diversity of different soil types. And before I started studying soils, I had no idea how diverse and beautiful and complex soils really are. They are a puzzle, and it has been so fun to allow myself to explore this from an artistic and creative avenue, as well as through a scientific lens as well. And so the diversity of different soil types is really inspiring to me. But it's not just the form and the color and the structure of the soil itself, the physical soil environment, but also the unique habitat that these environments create. And because there is this huge diversity in different soil types, we also have a huge diversity of different microorganisms and fauna that live within the soil. Now, in all the years that I have been studying soil biodiversity, it still does not cease to amaze me how many different kinds of organisms actually live within the soil. And the soil is such a unique and special habitat that creates opportunities for life to expound in so many different ways. And so some of these organisms may look familiar to you, bacteria and fungi. Some may be less familiar, like nematodes. But of course, this session is all about soil arthropods, and we have our arthropod friends here as well. And so this perplexing biodiversity, coupled with the amazing diversity of different soil forms, really led me to think about soils not just as being important for the ecosystem services that provide, but also as being a really important part of nature. And so when we think about soils, we often frame them around the things that they can provide for humanity. Soils provide so many different ecosystem services, in large part because of the organisms that live within that soil. And so some of these services are, of course, things like food production, regulating our climate, regulating water resources, and creating habitat for biodiversity both above and below ground. But soils are so much more than just what they do for us. Soils are a natural wonder, and I think that they're worth celebrating. Soils are a beautiful, complex part of nature that often don't get framed or communicated as being a part of nature, and rather as just being a natural resource. So I really like to use this phrase natural wonder because I think it encompasses that idea, that soils are part of nature and they deserve not only our respect, but also our curiosity and care. However, when you look across the way that soils have been communicated, we often skip this curiosity and wonder when thinking about soils and communicating about soils to different audiences. If I think about the thing that got me excited about soils in the first place, it was very much when I realized that soils are so many different colors and shapes, and it just really surprised me. I thought that soil was just this pile of brown stuff outside in which plants grew, and it wasn't until I really started to study soils and to think about them that I was able to see them as this part of nature. But often when we talk about soils, we don't bring people into this curiosity and wonder part of it that I think really sparks interest in people in the natural world. And so what I've been trying to do in my artwork is bring in that curiosity and wonder. And what I have come to realize is that art, just like science, is a process of better coming to know the world around us. So artists and scientists both apply practices that help us better make meaning and sense of the world. And so what I have been doing in my artwork over the last couple of years is thinking about how I can communicate the ideas and curiosity about soils through both the outcome of the physical artwork that I make, but also by engaging people in the process of making that artwork. And I think this can be well applied to any kind of science communication, where we can describe the outcome of a given study, but we can also help people understand the process of science that got us to those outcomes. And I think that that's really important. And the reason that this overlaps so well between scientists and artists is because we both use this skill of careful observation of nature. In order to do scientific research about the natural world, the first thing that we have to do is observe it. And the same is true for artists. And what I often say about soils is that one of the things that we first need to do is to develop the eyes to be able to see those soils in the first place. And so my art practice has aligned really well with some of these scientific skills that I have already developed over the years to be able to see the world from a new lens. And so much of my artwork is inspired by soils. This is an early piece where I was actually trying to re-represent a given soil profile out in nature. A soil profile is the straight-on horizontal view of a soil where the layers, or we call them horizons, are revealed below ground. And so when I started painting, I really just tried to represent what I saw out in nature. But then I also wanted to convey more of a feeling, the idea around soils and why I think soils are so exciting. And so a lot of my work has been much more whimsical and colorful in the years since. This is a couple of examples of different whimsical, colorful soil profiles. They don't look quite like anything you might see in nature, but they do, I think, communicate the feeling and the excitement that I get when I think about soils. I have also tried to integrate more process, like I said before. So while the last two examples here of some whimsical soil profile paintings are more about getting people to think about soils by showing them a piece of artwork, I've been more and more interested in trying to engage others in the processes by which soil forms and also the processes by which we do art to bring that into the conversation about communicating soils. And so here is a series of one-line soil profiles that I created a little while back. And each diagram here, or each little piece of artwork, is made with one continuous line. And each one represents a different soil type. These are the 12 orders of soil taxonomy. And the reason that I love this piece, and I think it has resonated with so many people, is because not only is it a simple graphic, but also the one line represents the real integrative part or nature of soils. And so in this artwork, I think I was able to represent not only a fun way to think about the different kinds of soil types and the diversity of soil orders, but also evoke that idea that soils are integrative. They are a dynamic, living part of nature. But the thing that I want to focus on today is a recent artwork that's actually on display in the exhibit hall until later this afternoon, and that is Hidden Processes. Hidden Processes is a piece of artwork that explores life below ground. This is 27 hand-carved prints that I individually stamped onto printmaking paper. Each of these stamps is inspired by a different organism that lives within the soil, and I used reference images from the Global Soil Biodiversity Atlas. All of these stamps are printed with soil-based watercolor paint, and I have tried to evoke the different horizons within the soil profile as well. Hidden Processes is all about exploring the biodiversity below ground and thinking about the processes that are often hidden to our view. But one of the things that I think made this project really a fun, creative endeavor is that I live streamed the entire thing on Twitch, because I wanted to bring others into the process of my creativity and have them be able to engage with the process of art and discussions about science as I was doing it. And so one of the things that really came out of this piece is that I didn't know how many stamps I was going to make. I didn't have a plan for this entire collection. I didn't even know if I could successfully print them all on one page. But it took many hours in community with other people encouraging me to continue on, to try again, and giving me suggestions about the design and things that they were most excited about. It took all of that community effort to be able to create a piece that is now really special to me. And so this is just one example of how I am trying to bring people in to not just the artwork itself, but also the process of making that artwork, the process of creativity. And so this has, of course, spurred some digital art as well that is fun to share on the internet and such. And I think it's important to bring in that whimsical nature as well. But what I want to leave you with is this idea here that, you know, if we want to communicate about anything related to science or nature or insects, I think there's the great potential for you not only to share the actual physical outcome of the piece, but also to invite others into your creative process at all stages. And so at this intersection where we share our work early and often, and we engage other people in the process of making art and the process of doing science, that I think is a place where our science communication efforts can be really strong. And so if you are just starting out, or if you are continuing on your journey in science communication, I hope that you'll consider this as a framework for thinking about how you might move forward. But I do want to remind you that just like all good things take time to develop. This is a lesson that I have learned from soils over the years, and this creative process is not something that I came to overnight. It has very much been a process of learning and growing and trial and error and finding something that works well for me. And so while I think it's really important for us to be able to share our work in many different ways, I also want to acknowledge that your creative practice may be different than mine, and I encourage you to take the time to explore that no matter where you are on your creative journey. Thank you so much for taking a little bit of time to celebrate soil with me today. I hope you'll join me wherever you are on the internet. You can find me at Wonder of Soil on Instagram, and also check out my website, yaminapressler.com. I really hope to hear from you. Thank you so much again for the invitation to speak today, and I will see you when I see you. Bye.